This show is brought to you by the Garden Gurus and Evergreen Garden Care. Evergreen Garden Care and their market-leading brands are some of the most trusted consumer brands within the garden care market. They produce high-quality garden care products designed to help people create their own green oasis. Whether it's a garden, a balcony, or potted indoor plants, they want to inspire anyone, anywhere to be able to easily create and maintain their own garden. To find out more about Evergreen Garden Care, head to www.lovethegarden.com. Garden Express are Australia's leading mail-order gardening service, offering a wide range of quality garden products. Each week on the Garden Gurus Live, the team at Garden Express will share a weekly offer. So make sure after today's show you jump online and visit their website.
Hi and welcome to the Garden Gurus Live. I'm Sue McDougall and I'm delighted to be part of your day today in the garden. What a fantastic Monday morning wherever you are around Australia. I hope you're enjoying the weather. Pretty lucky here in Perth with another gorgeous day, 25 degrees and sunny. But I do see by some of the forecasts around, and we'll be talking to David Van Berkel a little bit later on. I'm sure he'll tell me how chilly and wet and showery it is in Melbourne. If you're in Hobart, showers again. How fantastic. It really is. I think the weather's turning at this time of the year. It just happens. But if you happen to be in the warmer weather, 28 and sunny, I think that wins the prize for today. Brisbane's looking gorgeous, Darwin as well. So welcome to our Garden Gurus Live for another morning. So much to talk about today. We're streaming from so many pages, from multiple areas or sites. Thanks for joining us and being part of it. From the Garden Gurus Facebook page, the Love the Garden Facebook page, Garden Express Facebook, and our very own YouTube channel. If you've got lots of questions to ask, join them, put them down. Don't forget to put in your comment section, because we also have got our prize. We've got some Mr. Fothergill seeds to give away today, 5 packets, but you can only be part of it if you stick your question down. Don't forget to put where you're from, so hopefully I can help answer what's happening. The different climatic areas in Australia certainly makes a difference, and also makes a difference to timing of different things in the garden. Now, what's coming up on today's show? As well as you joining us and asking lots of gardening questions, we've got David Van Berkel. I always get inspired when I talk to the team at Gardens Express, and David will be sharing the Gardens Express offer of the week. I know there's lots of things happening and it really is planting time. So you can be rest assured we've got something really exciting for you. I'll show you some plants that are looking fantastic in my garden. And maybe just to give you some tips, what's looking fantastic in your garden? Give us a comment. We would love to hear. Join in and see, because sometimes we get lots of ideas with what's happening in people's backyards and in the garden. We've been lucky here in Perth to finish our garden festival over the last week, and I must say I'm inspired once again. Don't you find when you visit someone's garden how inspiring it is? So we've also got Love the Garden's Alicia Lammond joining us to tell us what you should be doing in your lawn or for your lawn at the moment. And depending where you live, if you're experiencing some of those chilly mornings, well, maybe Alicia will be able to tell us some tips of what we can do with our lawn to keep it growing, keep it looking fantastic throughout the winter months. So should we head straight to our calls? Well, I'm so used to talking about calls, but our comments and answering the questions. And this one's I probably must say declare an interest. This is Lachlan, who's always behind the scenes sorting this Garden Gurus Facebook Live with you, bringing us, making it possible so we can talk to you today. He's got a question about his indoor plants, but they're growing on a balcony and they've been doing brilliantly, but there's mushrooms growing in pots. Now, did this happen by itself, or what can he do? Well, it just happens actually. If anyone's got mushrooms growing in pots, it's because the plants are healthy. It's the fruiting spore or the fruiting body of the natural occurring fungi that's in the soil, usually not detrimental to plants at all. One of the ones that is detrimental to plants if you've got orange armillaria toadstools growing, but if they're little mushrooms coming up, that's fairly normal. Sometimes it can be because the weather's been really humid. Often it can be when there's a bit too much moisture around. But on a third floor balcony, you'll find it's just because there's moisture. At least it tells me, or it tells us, Lachlan, that you're actually watering your plants. So that's a bonus. And that's what actually happens at this time of the year. We tend to water a little bit much, a little bit less. Always remember, I often say one of my tips for this week is if you've got a garden bed that's under the eaves of the house and you think, I can turn the reticulation system off or the irrigation system off at this time of the year, just be mindful of the plants that aren't getting the natural rain, because this is the time of the year when we start to get areas drying out, and that's why it's always good to put those plants that can cope with dry area shade in those areas, because I always think, oh no, I've forgotten to water that part of my garden. So that's this morning's big tip. But if you've got a gardening tip, why not write it in the comments? We would love to hear. Let's head to New South Wales. We've had a photo sent in with a problem of scale on a frangipani. Now, it looks like scale. So many scale insects around at the moment. And scale is actually really interesting. It can be controlled very easily with white oil. And what we do with scale is white oil or pest oil actually suffocates a little insect. So there's a little insect underneath a coat of armour that it develops, and it's so protected by that coat of armour. And what you'll find often if you see scaling insects on a plant, you often see some ants around as well. And the ants are protecting the scale and feeding off the honeydew. It's super sweet. So Beck, if you can spray with white oil at this time of the year, any leaves that drop, just pick those up and get rid of those because the insects are still on them. But one of the interesting things about scale, their life cycle, they hatch in the heat of the summer, and that's when the crawlers are most vulnerable. So if you have temperatures under 35 degrees, you can spray with white oil then, and when the crawlers are very vulnerable, you break the life cycle of the scale insects, and that makes a difference. But definitely you'll find this time of the year when the temperatures are under 35, you can spray with white oil along the stems as well. And a little tip, if you're using white oil, you can put some food colouring in with it, and that gives you a really good indicator of where you've actually sprayed. Often it's easy to miss some leaves. Hope that helps your frangipani. Now, from frangipanis, which are looking gorgeous, I must say, all around, to grapevines. Have you got a grapevine growing well in your garden? One of my favourite plants for summer shade, winter sun. They grow so fast and grow in many areas of Australia. So from Diane in Cassala in New South Wales, my dad has a green and black grapevine that's about 4 years old. It's got really green leaves, but there are no grapes. What are we doing wrong? So depending on what variety it is, or if you've got two varieties, all grapes, Diane, always start off green and then they turn to red if they, depending on the variety. But there's two types of grapes. One is a variety that's spur pruned. So that means you cut the new growth. So they fruit on their new growth. If you prune it back, or there's a cane pruning variety. So what that means is that they fruit on their second year's growth. What you need to do with your dad, or ask your dad not to prune it for at least a year. What that will do is indicate when it sets flower buds and develops those flowers, where it's actually fruiting. Is it fruiting on the new growth, or is it fruiting on those canes? My bet is that he prunes it every year and it sets fruit on the canes. But if the canes have been pruned off, that wood has to get to the second season, if that makes sense. Also, depending on the variety, some varieties are very shy of setting fruit. Some of the older varieties more susceptible to mildew, more susceptible to pests and diseases. Some of the new varieties don't fruit, are a little bit shy of fruiting. And red globe grape is actually one of those. You'll find that it does tend to be making sure all the conditions are right for it to set fruit beautifully. So don't prune it. Get your dad not to prune it this year and just see if it sets its fruit. If it is a cane pruning variety of grape, what we do is we leave 5 or 6 of those main canes, cut them back a little bit, and then that will be your fruiting wood for the following season. And then you can cut those out and develop some of those canes, leave those for the next year. I hope that helps a lot, and hopefully that will result in some beautiful homegrown grapes. There is nothing nicer, I think, than the flavour of the old-fashioned grape. My favourite, my very favourite grapes are the seeded ones. I think I'm the only person in the country that likes seeded grapes, but I just think they've got so much flavour. And who can remember chomping into currant grapes as well? The flavour of those is just absolutely fantastic. Brings back lots of memories. Thanks for that question, Diane. Now we are talking, how's your lawn looking? Mine's looking pretty good at the moment. We've had some great rain in Perth, some beautiful warm weather, and that's if you're growing a warm season variety of lawn, but just starting to go a little bit yellow at the moment, maybe you've got some tips. And we are joined by Alicia Lammond, we're talking actually autumn lawn care tips, but also talking about Lawn Builder, what's happening with the products around, how we can keep your lawn looking gorgeous. Good morning, Alicia.
Good morning, Sue. How are you?
No, really well. I'm inspired, actually. This time of the year, the lawn is, well, after a bit of rain, doesn't it just pick up beautifully?
It is, and that's one thing that we've had a lot of, even on the east side. So we're based on the east side. We've had quite a bit of rain here, which has been good. We'd love to see all the lawns lovely and green, but now it's coming into winter, so we've got to take care.
Yeah, we certainly do. And what happens is that the growth rate does slow down. We do mostly in most areas of Australia, we have what we call warm season grasses. But the tips for looking after lawns is exactly the same whether you're growing a cool season lawn or a warm season lawn, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes. So what
So
you
what do we
want to
do
be
in
doing? Sorry. So what do you want to be doing at this stage? So yes, coming into winter, we do know that the grass will slow down, and benefits of that are fantastic, that we don't need to mow it as much. But there's still some things we want to make sure that we can do for our lawn to make sure it will bounce back quickly in spring. One of those is aerate. We want to be able to get the nutrients down into the soil, and obviously during winter that's going to be more crucial than ever. The other thing is mowing at a higher level. Mowing at a higher level will actually give us more leaf there to be able to soak in those nutrients. We do experience a little less sunlight during winter months, so we do need to allow the grass to capture as much of that as possible, and having a sort of a higher mow setting and leaving a little bit more leaf growth there over the winter months would be a good thing to help the lawn survive the winter and also bounce back quickly in spring. And then lastly, I'd say that as far as the crucial thing is to have a look for weeds at the moment. Being able to sort of solve those weed issues now will be a time saver for spring. We'll be able to prevent some of that weed growth by dealing with the weeds now, and that will obviously be less work for us later on.
Alicia, interesting you talk about weeds. We don't tend to, I spend my life answering questions on Talkback Radio, and people don't actually ask about their lawn or their weeds until it's the other end of the season. I think that's the big tip for today, is get them as they're germinating. They germinate right now when we've had the rain and they've still got the warm weather.
Exactly. And some of those more pesky weeds like Bindi, it's starting to grow now. I mean, I know in my lawn I can see Bindi in parts of it. I've sort of got a acreage area, so there's one section of the lawn that I've catered to, and then there's the other section that I...
Oops, I think we may have lost Alicia's connection for a little bit. Back again, there we are. Alicia, we lost you for a little bit.
I'm back. Now's the time to start to look at your lawn and see if there is any bindi, especially in the northern sort of parts of Australia. And in the south, creeping oxalis as well is another one that will start to flourish. And what happens is, in the winter period where the lawn perhaps isn't growing, those types of weeds are actually very active during winter. So we want to take care of them now so that they don't actually crowd out the lawn and prioritise themselves and soak in all the nutrients over what the lawn would want to actually have for itself. So, yes, dealing with those weeds would be, I'd say, a top priority for most of us at the moment.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just wanted to go back, Alicia, to something you mentioned straight out was aerating the lawn. Many areas of in Australia, the lawn gets used to park cars on, but also heavy soil, a little bit of water at the moment. Pooling's not beneficial for a lawn area, is it?
No, no, we don't want that pooling. One of the particular things that we can do is obviously, as you mentioned, aerate. Another aspect that we could actually do, or another product that we could actually use to solve some of those pooling issues, are a wetting agent of some sort that will actually break down some of that surface barrier and allow the nutrients to soak better into the soil. That'll prevent runoff as well, because all that water that we do want, we want to keep it and we want to have it in our lawns. We don't want it running off and down the street. So they're two ways. Aerating and using a wetting agent would be the two key things that we'd look into doing to solve some of those pooling issues in your lawn.
And also adding a little bit of organic matter if you've got some areas,
Yes.
particularly if you live in a warm climate areas, the northern areas of Australia where we have many of our viewers from. It's really perfect growing time, really, in those areas, isn't it?
Yes, yes. I mean, so a product that you could use a bit of top dress. You could probably apply that out onto your lawn, or a sort of a slow release fertilizer with organic matter in. We tend to see during the winter months the fertilizer will actually stay within the soil or within the grass until the growing season, so that's a good benefit. But some of that organic matter will actually make a difference now.
Yeah, it certainly will. It does make a difference. And reiterate, aeration definitely. Keep the mowing heights a bit higher, and also get rid of those weeds at the moment. Alicia, that seems just a few jobs to do definitely this weekend to ensure you've got a fantastic lawn coming up right through winter and ready, I must say, hit the ground running when it comes to early spring.
Yeah. So we can enjoy it again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you enjoy yourself, enjoy your lawn.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
you get a chance to get rid of the weeds in your lawn. You're right, oxalis and bindi at the moment. Always remind everyone to get rid of it now before it becomes a problem, because I can say as a kid, running on lawn with bindi is not much fun. And that's what we have a lawn for, isn't it? Really, to enjoy it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Good to talk to you, Alicia. Thank you very
Thank you
much for
very
your
much,
time.
Sue.
Yeah,
Thanks.
my pleasure. Alicia from Love the Garden, she's actually right into lawns. I know she's got a good lawn of herself from Evergreen Garden Care. Check it out. See if you can find some tips on your lawn. And if you've got some tips about your lawn, put it in the comments. Maybe you have a chance to win one of the packets of seeds, or share what's happening with your lawn at the moment. I've got a sheep on my lawn at the moment. She's looking very fat, but it's just saved me having to mow it. So not really the traditional way of mowing the lawn, but it's just handy for now. Too many sheep will eat too much, but one does a really good job. So we head to the garden, head back to the potted plants, and from Steve in Perth. Should we be fertilising zygos now they're in bud and or flowering? So depending whether you've got zygo plants, one of the easiest, zygo cactus are one of the easiest flowering patio plants that just ignored when they're not in flower, but absolutely thrive when they're in flower and looking gorgeous. One of the other names for zygo cactus is claw cactus. You can feed them definitely at the moment, Steve, but what we tend to do if we feed them too much, they grow past their flowers. And so if you can keep them at the beginning of every season, put some controlled release fertilizer on them. And then at the moment, you can give them a little bit of liquid fertilizer, just so that you can imagine how many nutrients it takes out of the plant, out of the leaves to flower and look beautiful. So if you can give them just a weak solution of a liquid fertilizer at the moment, makes a difference. What we want to do is enjoy those flowers as a whole basket of flowers, looking absolutely stunning, rather than the new growth coming from the flowers. So zygo cactus, I know I saw some beautiful ones through the week, and it just inspires me to grow them again. One of the hardiest, if you're a beginner gardener, one of the hardiest flowering plants you can put maybe even on your 3rd-story balcony, Lachlan, they might do really well as well. They're really tough and fantastic to add some colour. Now, from Perth to Sydney, good morning, Keith. Well, good evening, good afternoon, I should say now. I have a mango tree that's almost as tall as a 2-story house. I was wondering if it's okay to trim it down a bit, or will trimming kill the tree? Trimming won't kill the tree at all. Well done. What a fantastic climate to have a mango growing that high. Definitely trim it. Actually, interesting, Keith, with mangoes is that just wait until it's flowering so you know where the flower buds are sitting. If you want to not lose too many flowers for one season, so what you will do is look at where the flowering stalks are, and then just trim some of the branches that either haven't got flowering stalks, strategically thin it out a little bit, because the branches that you trim out now will shoot away beautifully, and then over a period of next year, the ones that you haven't trimmed this year, you will trim next season. So it'll be over a couple of space of a couple of years. You can trim it out and let it shoot away, and that way you won't lose the fruit for this season. So mangoes are amazing. Amazing evergreen tree in those warmer climates of Australia. You'll be able to enjoy the fruit of a homegrown mango. There's absolutely nothing like it either. Enjoy. From a mango tree to a peace lily. I've just transferred my peace lily from soil to water. Just wondering where it would get its nutrients from, and do I need to fertilise? Yeah, you do need to fertilise. Peace lilies are you'll find that they do need, what happens if you're planting something in water and also glass beads you're using to hold up? What we do is that we don't sit it in water that's got fertilizer or nutrients in it all the time. What you will do, Janice, is just put a little bit of liquid fertilizer, keep it in there for 24, 48 hours. So soluble liquid fertilizer, empty it out, and then refill it with fresh water again. And you'll find that the plant won't have buildup of salts. Tends to happen, and what we tend to do with, say, something like a lucky bamboo or anything that's growing in water, we keep topping up the water. As it evaporates, the dissolved salts that are in the water, we start to get burning, and you'll start to see marks and the concentration of salt in the water. And that's why it's better just to empty it out after 48 hours, refresh it, put fresh soil, fresh water in there, and then the plant can thrive. So the other way you can get nutrients is you just actually foliar feed it. So many indoor plants and many fertilizers are absorbed immediately through the foliage. So a soluble fertilizer is absolutely fantastic for being absorbed through the foliage, and it's easy. So you don't actually have to every fortnight. You can just spray it lightly with a mist sprayer, and it will absorb the nutrients completely. Peace lilies are fantastic. They're a great plant for low light conditions, for high light conditions, and when they're thriving well, they're doing absolutely fantastic. And you find with peace lilies, if you're starting to get burning around the edges of the leaves, you're starting to show that they'll be overwatered, and that's particularly important if you're growing them in soil. Don't let them sit in a saucer of water continually, and then you'll be assured of beautiful flowers as well as great plants. Also really good for low light positions. If you're looking for an indoor plant with a low light position, maybe peace lily is your plant. Now from Angela, I have some dragon fruit that are green and not growing red. Can I eat them while they're green? Well, actually depends, Angela, where you actually live. Yeah, you can, but they're not very mature, and also you'll find that the flavour won't be there. So you might be able to eat them, but you won't be able to enjoy them. So if you're in a warm spot, so you're growing them in the Northern Territory, they'll colour up eventually. If they're in sun, you'll find they'll colour up better. And that may be just the reason why they're not actually growing or not developing their colour, is because they might not have enough light. So just check, make sure, open it up, brighten it out, expose that fruit to the light, and they'll do well. And well done, actually, by the way. If you can grow dragon fruit, that's maybe the topic of many questions on Gardening Talkback. Many people go, oh, my dragon fruit flowers a lot, but it doesn't actually set fruit. So well done to actually get the fruit to set. Enjoy it, because the flavour is something else. They're a great plant to grow. Not particularly attractive, but also such a challenge to get them to grow so well. Enjoy it. Yep, share it around. You can enjoy it. Open up the plant to light. Now, many plants in the garden. Have you got anything looking absolutely fantastic in your garden. One of the things I wanted to feature today, my plants of the week. I love all plants, and there's always something looking amazing in the garden. But what I really wanted to feature were grey leaf plants, and a couple of grey leaf plants that are looking amazing. And the reason I love them so much at the moment is once we start to get a little bit of dew around at night, once we start to get a shimmer and then we put the light onto it. This is Eremophila nivea. Now, Eremophila nivea is a West Australian species. If you grow it in a cool climate area, you can buy grafted varieties. So grafted variety in heavy soil does well, but Eremophila nivea is one in particular that does particularly well in heavy soil as well as sandy soil. Now, this has 2 times of the year it's beautiful. One when they've got this beautiful soft grey foliage, and the other one is when they've got these beautiful mauve flowers when it's flowering. But grey foliage is one of those highlights for light at this time of the year. And when the dew sets on it at night and gets a glimpse of light and it moves in the wind, it's particularly beautiful. And the other reason I wanted to highlight grey leaf plants is because if you've got a garden area, you live with someone with low vision, grey leaf plants are one of the best plants that you can put at the side of a path. If you've got an area that you want to highlight, someone finds it really difficult to see and they've got low vision gardening, it's fantastic because the light reflects and it means that you're bordering a pathway, you're making a garden more accessible for many people. And grey, use it to your advantage. It's a fantastic small shrub. So Eremophila nivea is a lovely small shrub to 1 metre high, and mauve flowers in spring, but this time of the year the grey foliage is just stunning and always a little bit fairy. Just love the feel of it. But the other grey leaf plant, you get 2 for the price of 1 today. The other grey leaf plant, and I sort of chopped this off that way, is Dichondra argentea silver falls. Now, I couldn't bring you the whole plant because it's huge, but it is one of the fantastic ground covers. It looks absolutely stunning, planted with burgundy, fast growing. I've got it in a terrazzo pot. That the pot's awful looking, but it makes this plant makes it look absolutely gorgeous. And I've got some burgundy foliage, alternanthera in the middle of it. It grows actually really well in a shady position and still keeps this glow, this colour, doing amazingly well. So this also reflects the light. Chop it back hard, it grows so fast. You chop it back. One thing it absolutely hates is drying out. So it will wilt. And then if you don't pick it up in time, it's actually a good indicator. You know, some plants wilt really well and then you've got time to water them. Well, this is one of those magic plants. So when it wilts, it's telling you it needs water, but it's just this cascade of beautiful, gorgeous foliage. Check it out in the garden centres. I'm sure you'll see it in many places at the moment as a small plant, but when it grows, it's particularly beautiful. Dichondra argentea silver falls. See if you can find it in your garden centre for this weekend. A few sneak peeks, grey plants. If you've got some grey plants in your garden, use grey to your advantage in your garden, that's for sure. Now, we'll take a breath for a minute. We've got a great episode of the Garden Gurus this weekend. I hope you've been tuning in from wherever you are in the country. Here's a sneak peek of what's actually happening.
G'day folks, this Saturday on the Garden Gurus I've got some great autumn hedge pruning tips for you, and I'm using one of these fabulous long reach hedge trimmers from Stihl. So make sure you're watching this Saturday on the Garden Gurus.
Now back. Did you enjoy that? Don't forget to tune in this weekend, and a little bit later on I'll tell you the times that you can tune into the Garden Gurus. There's lots of information in the Garden Gurus. Autumn is an inspiring time. Just as autumn is an inspiring time to maybe look at your indoor plants. Have you got something looking fantastic? To inspire us some even more, our great mate David Van Berkel from Gardens Express joins us. David, your offers are amazing. Good afternoon, I should say, in Melbourne.
I'm thinking the other way. Good morning to you, Sue. How are you going?
Just absolutely amazing. Fantastic. I know that Melbourne's feeling a little bit chilly this morning, so we're going to turn our focus to to indoors, because we can still garden with indoor plants.
Before we get there, I just wanted to comment on my grey plant. I have a Bismarckia palm, and
Yes.
far north Queensland, right? And or Thailand, those types of places. So I've got it under some gum trees. It's been there for 5 years, and I've only had 3 new leaves, but I don't kill it with the frost. So that's my grey plant of the week.
Yeah, I love it, because we tend to forget about grey. We think about green, we think about flowers, but grey and silver is just one of my favourite accents to use in the garden.
Yeah, absolutely. Cinerary is another one that I really like. The silver dust, and there's so many that you can choose from. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight that, like the dragon fruit, you have to try something different and then try and emulate some of that climate, and and really just expand the thoughts on what you can grow in your garden. So if I love something, I'll give it a go, and I've killed plenty, but that one's still alive.
Yeah, I don't count the things that I've killed because I always think we never do. But I think we're starting, and it is a little bit about finding your own microclimate in your garden, have experience. I think that a plant is way cheaper than even going out for dinner. So even you don't give up going out for dinner. So you do, you do just buy another plant.
The best of both worlds, right?
Yeah, it certainly is. Now we want to talk indoor plants today, because I know Garden Express has got great range of indoor plants. We have seen a demand in indoor plant gardening, or indoor gardening has been unprecedented. But for many reasons, I just love walking into a place and seeing green.
Yeah, I think it sort of skipped a generation, didn't it? Where probably the last 10, 15 years, they haven't been as popular. And everyone would remember their grandparents having those plants, or even your parents. But nowadays it's in all of the cafes, and even in like clothes shops and that, you'll see a few plants hanging around, and it's such a beautiful thing to bring that life indoors.
Do you remember your grandmother? I remember my grandmother having a sweet potato plant growing around the windowsill, always just on a saucer of water. We had African violets under grow lights as well. That was always a trend. And the planter poles, the hanging spider plants.
Yeah, look, all old favourites, right? I haven't seen an African violet for a few years now, I don't think. No, exactly. Just the spider plant's beautiful. Indoors, patios, and this is the thing, the patio's been there for a while, but just taking those plants indoors, even if it's for a couple of months, and then give them a refresher outdoors, you'll be surprised at what will be happy by a windowsill, and just give you that freshness.
Interesting you say that, because I often say to people, just get 2. One inside, one outside, and just swap them around, because we can't expect things. We talk about them being indoor plants, but really indoor plants are those varieties that take lower light conditions.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. So they don't have to technically be so close to the window. They can sit on top of your lounge room table or something like that. And the ones that we've got on offer for you this week are just classic examples of those true indoor plants. Beautiful specimens, beautiful to add value with a little bit of some decorative pots, and really create that ambiance in your family spaces.
Yeah, well, let's go for it and see what we can inspire our viewers with today, David. You've got a couple of collections. Now, these are a saving of 20%, which is fantastic. For those people who have never ordered from Gardens Express before, they get them delivered very quickly. They roll up in the post, and looks like they've never been packaged, I must say.
Once you take them out of the packaging, they're fresh and ready to go. So we keep all of that, really, really current and really quick to get to you. These plants are in 130 ml pots, so a nice size just to put straight into a decorative pot, but also a substantial plant for your money. So the 20% off is a really good saving on this range.
So what have we got in collection 1? Inspire me, because I can't decide if I want collection 1 or collection 2. I might have to get both.
I think we mix them up to make sure that you maybe want to take one of each collection. So, the Swiss cheese is one of my favourites at the moment. And the Hedera. The Hedera is a really beautiful plant. Devil's Ivy, the fruit salad plant. So the first collection is the fruit salad plant, the Devil's Ivy, and the Hedera. And the fruit salad plant is a slightly larger grower. We've got those in our house in I would say like 45 centimeter bowls. So they grow quite tall. Whereas in the second collection, we've got the peace lily. It gives you that beautiful white flower as well. The spider plant and the Swiss cheese monstera, which is like fruit salad, but a more compact version, a little bit more of a climber as well.
Yeah, and I know, speaking from experience, they go up the window around and then you think, oh, I have to chop it back, and you really don't want to because it's growing so well. But also the other interesting thing I wanted to talk about within this collection is the use of variegation. So use of foliage. We talked about silver foliage plants just earlier, but just some great foliage colour within those to add some colour to indoors as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of work being done with breeders, particularly in Europe, but also here in Australia, to add those flavours. And I can see one behind you there. It's got the lemon hints in it, and there's even some oranges and pinks coming through in the foliage of some of these plants. And I was talking to a fellow who has, I think it's a monstera from Thailand. With such variegation and colours, he's getting for like a struck leaf about $400 on eBay.
Oh, David, we're in the wrong industry.
I know, it's crazy, but it's a beautiful special plant that there's probably only 100 or so in Australia right now. So yeah, some wonderful innovation.
Yeah, what do we do? How do we look after them? A few tips growing indoor plants to ensure success, because it's a great way for people. Offer is $45, it's saving of 20%. So recommended retail is $56.70. You get them for $45 to keep them looking gorgeous. What do we need to do?
Of course, as soon as they arrive, give them a nice fresh water. But every time you water an indoor, you probably want to let it drain in your kitchen sink. Or if you have got it in a hanging basket, don't overwater it. Just like a half a glass for like a 200 ml pot. You just don't want to get them too wet. They're quite used to being a little bit dry. So saturating an indoor plant's not a good idea.
Yeah, I must say that. That's what I'm teaching my kids not to do, David, overwater. I'm the plant hospital at the moment, but it's so good. Teenage kids are just decorating the whole bedroom with indoor plants, and I hear that often. Families have got kids my similar age, and it's so exciting to get them involved in plants. And if they can have success, you talk earlier about a lost generation of gardeners, indoor plant gardeners we certainly have, but we're breeding them, we're enthusing them and inspiring them once again.
Yeah, and my other tip would be just to check your plant every month for, the encroachment of any of the little bugs and things that might have come in with your fruit. Or in a warmer climates, if the air's a little bit still, you'll get like a mealy bug at the very base of the leaves, or sort of the joining of the leaves to the crown of the plant. So you might have to occasionally give a little bit of a spray, but plant health is important. That way that you won't get sort of any sap drippings or anything coming off the plants.
Easy. How easy is that? So you can go online, our Garden Express offer of the week. How do we find it?
www.gardenexpress.com.au.
It's as easy as that. Remember, 2 collections of indoor plants, one $45, saving of 20%, and that's got the hedra, the devil's ivy, and the fruit salad plant. 3 things that you can't kill. Collection 2's got the spider plant, the Swiss cheese, and also spathiphyllum, which all of those are my favourite, I must say, David. All for $45. Head to gardenexpress.com.au. Look forward to catching up next week.
Cheers, Sue, indeed. And I'm getting the feeling that nearly every plant is your favourite.
You know me too well. You're right. Exactly. That's so true. Thanks, David. Lovely to chat to you again. Check them out, gardenexpress.com.au. Great supporters of the Garden Gurus Facebook Live. Enjoy that beautiful cool weather in Melbourne, David. Look forward to it. Let's head to Perth. Our Illawarra flame tree, which we've raised from seed, are dropping their bottom leaves and they have turned light brown. What's going on? Sometimes it can do that, Helen. You find Illawarra flame trees, if they've put on incredible new growth over the last few months, you'll find that they will drop their older leaves. That's very normal. Illawarra flame trees are actually what we call summer deciduous. So they drop their leaves when they flower in summer. You find that when they're looking spectacular, you'll find that then there'll be no leaves and just incredible flowers, bright red flowers, depending on the variety you've got growing. This time of the year, if they're in pots, you'll find that they will drop sometimes their older leaves that can be either underwater, overwater, or they've put incredible new growth on at the moment. Don't fear, if the new growth is looking amazing, you'll find the rest of the plant will keep growing. So Illawarra flame trees take a little time to flower from seed, but I can tell you the results are definitely worthwhile. Heading to Rockingham, beautiful coastal suburb of Western Australia. Why are the leaves on my fuchsia turning yellow and dropping off? That's a great question, actually, from Frank and Janet. It's a great question, and the reason is fuchsias are very susceptible to spider mite. One of the indicators to me that you've got spider mite is yellowing of the leaves and also dropping of those yellow leaves. So just have a little check. If you've got really good eyesight, just have a look underneath the leaf and you'll see this very fine webbing usually, and particularly because it's in a protected position. Fuchsias at the moment, you're growing them on a veranda out of the wind in a protected position, particularly Rockingham. It's quite a windy position. You'll find that the spider mite loves the dry, loves protection, and they breed every 10 days. Can you believe a whole generation comes through every 10 days so quickly? So one of the easiest things that you can do with fuchsias to get rid of spider mite, one of the best things to use is dusting sulfur, actually, one of the safest and works effectively. That'll also clear up any spider mite and any powdery mildew, which doesn't tend to happen on certain varieties of fuchsias, but you'll find that that will knock the spider mite on their head well and truly. The other thing that you can use, and it's registered for spider mite, is the use of horticultural oil. So something like white oil or pest oil will control spider mite as well. Keep those comments coming. Lots of things happening in gardens at this time of the year, I must say. Oh, David's caught me out. Indoor plants are some of my favourites as well, but also this time of the year I think is one of my favourites. There's a sense of anticipation when the season's changing. The colours are beautiful. You can plant. Autumn really is nature's natural planting time. Heading to Queensland now. I have a chili coyote and heard the seeds and seedlings are toxic. So what do I do with the seeds when disposing? If you can either wrap them when the seeds are toxic. You find you can wrap them in newspaper and you can put them in the bin, in the rubbish, no problem at all. Or you can wrap them in newspaper and let them compost down. Just make sure nothing eats them or there's nothing around. So if you can either wet newspaper, put them in a plastic bag as well and put them in the bin, that's okay. No problem at all, Maz. To head to another question from Queensland. I hope the climate in Queensland is just beautiful. When is the best time to take cutting of euphorbia fire sticks? Scott, be so careful with euphorbia fire sticks. The stories that you hear, even though it's a beautiful plant, the damage that it can do with vision and the sap, just be so careful with it because the sap's flowing at the moment, particularly in Queensland, and it's tricky to grow. So you can grow in Queensland any time of the year. You'll be able to do a cutting of euphorbia fire sticks. As the weather's warmer, even better because it will take really quickly. But if you're in a cooler climate, you wouldn't grow a euphorbia fire stick unless you're growing it in the warm weather. But in Queensland, no problem at all. The other thing you can do, depending if the plant is quite large or the branches are close to the ground, you can actually just nick in to the bottom part into the bark of one of the branches and then just pin it to the ground, cover it over with potting mix and then pin it to the ground. It will send out roots and then you can cut it off. But I am being so careful, if you can, Scott, of the sap of your euphorbia. Many euphorbias are dangerous, but fire sticks in particular is very dangerous and can cause a few problems. So cover up, totally cover up if you're mucking around with that plant. Don't want to alarm you, but I just want to let you know, you may not know of the problems that we have with fire sticks. Thanks, Scott, for that. So we're now talking camellias. Are they one of your favourites? I think they are mine too at this time of the year. Graham and Naomi, welcome to Garden Gurus Facebook Live. We have a 30-year-old camellia that we transplanted in July 2020 that hasn't survived. Is there anything I can do? This plant has sentimental value. If it's already dead, there's not a lot we can do. But if it's shooting away, you'll find that, so send us another comment if you like, but if it's trying to shoot away, you'll see it's starting to die back. Hopefully it will send out some shoots from the base. And if it does that, then you can chop the main branches off quite easily. It's interesting actually. As much of the root system of camellia, I've managed to transplant a really established camellia that did have sentimental value, and it survived beautifully. It shot away, it started to die back. We trimmed it back, and then it shot from the base. But the second summer was the problem with it, and so you still really need to keep the water up to it and keep it growing. Camellias are one of those plants that only grow once a year. And by that I mean they put their effort into their flower buds. They go through their flowering time, depending on the variety, whether you've got a Camellia sasanqua that flowers in April, or between April and July, or Camellia japonica that flowers later in the season, or a reticulator lata that flowers really late in the season. You'll find after their new growth is immediately after they finish flowering. So if it's a Camellia japonica, it will flower late. You've got the best chance of getting some new growth on it at that time of the year. So if it's one that flowers normally in August, you will see at the end of August, that's when it puts its new growth on. So that's when you can give it some seaweed extract, so some sea soil, some power feed, liquid fertilizer, and really push it on and see if you can get those beautiful new growth to come through. But if it's already died, by the question it says it hasn't survived. So if it's already died, unfortunately, depending on the variety, maybe you can find another variety of the same plant or another plant of the same variety and put it in the ground. But yes, they can transplant quite easily as long as you take enough of the root system with it when you transplant it. Often camellias are planted right up next to a house and their root system goes underneath or underneath a pathway, and it's very difficult to take as much of the root system as possible. But tip for anyone who's transplanting anything through winter, take as much of the root system as you can physically lift, or you've got friends that can physically help you, or if you can just get it out, because then you're setting a plant up for being less stressed coming up through summer. To Central Queensland, to Sandra, good afternoon, I should say, Sandra. I've just taken azaleas out of the pack part of an oval garden bed. This area gets limited sun in winter but full sun in summer. What other plants could I plant? It's actually interesting that that time of the year or that area is always hard. Winter sun is perfect, but once we're starting to get winter shade and hot summer sun, that's when you'll start to need to look at different varieties. One plant that would be worthwhile, have a look for some of the Westringia varieties. So native rosemaries, Philotheca is another one that will grow really well and cope with full sun position. Flower Girl or Cascade of Stars is another fantastic shrub that you will be able to. Philothecas. Rosemary is another one that would cope beautifully. The native rosemary you can plant in those areas. But if you've got azaleas, so you want something that gets to about 1 metre high, pelargoniums is another plant that I often say summer flowering azaleas, because they've just flowered beautifully, cope with most conditions totally. And you find if they grow in winter shade but full hot sun, they tend to flower a little bit later. But from a distance, they've got these incredible flowers from October, November, December, and they'll just put on an amazing show at that time of the year. I hope that gives you some tips and some inspiration, particularly that hot afternoon sun. And I'm imagining Central Queensland, that hot afternoon sun gets pretty harsh on some of those garden plants. And don't forget to put a good quality mulch, because if we can keep the soil cool, we're halfway there. And one of the tips about growing azaleas is that they've got a very shallow root system. So they do need a cool climate or a cool root zone. Their roots are in the top 10 centimetres of the soil, and that can be a problem when we're doing. So for any azaleas, you've got azaleas, when you trim them back or you're growing them, don't forget to mulch them coming up to next spring, and that will help them get through the summer. From Rick in Sydney, good afternoon, I should say. Rick, is it best to soak shooting garlic in a seaweed solution prior to planting in the garden? Absolutely, go for it. It won't matter, but yeah, it will definitely help. As a tip, I always soak everything I plant in a bucket of sea salt. always first. Just dunk the whole plant, everything, and it just makes a huge difference. So it's not going to hurt anything. And then once you've planted it, then you can drench the soil and drench the plants definitely as they shoot away. Enjoy that garlic. If you've never grown it before, it's fantastic long-term crop. Garlic is one of those crops that you plant at this time of the year and you really definitely reap the rewards for it in the beginning of, well, it's actually really mid-spring when you can harvest it. To Belgrave, I have terrible trouble with onion weed in my lawn and it's ruined the lawn. Now, I put plants in the lawn space, but the onion weed multiplies. How do I get rid of it? It's actually really tricky, Margaret. Yes, you can spray, and there are selective herbicides that you can get for onion weed. If you don't want to spray onion weed, it's one of those plants that you just have to almost loosen the soil, dig it out, grab the clumps of onion weed, and you just pull it out before those bulbs develop. They are one of those, when I say banes of many gardeners' life, onion weed. It tends to happen if the soil is compacted as well. So if you can loosen the soil, that makes a big difference. I know where in my garden, where the soil is very compacted, that causes a problem with onion weed as well. So loosen the soil. Thick layers of mulch sometimes doesn't work, but you'll find if you can get a selective herbicide, or if you're very hesitant in spraying yourself, you might have to get a contractor in to spray it, just to break the life cycle for you. So there are specific herbicides, selective herbicides for onion weed, but do a test to make sure, depending what plants you've planted in that garden area, that aren't susceptible to being damaged by a herbicide as well. Sometimes we do have to resort to spraying things, unfortunately, but if we can get around it by pulling it out, that will help it as well, particularly where the soil's compacted. Hopefully we can help you with that. Let's head to Inaloo. Rosemary, it looks like my chili plants and my roses are attacked by chili thrips. Should I just cut it off or spray? Now, for those people who may not know, and you might have lived with it all around the country, but Western Australia has been invaded in the last 6 to 12 months with a problem called chili thrips. It causes all this distorted growth on roses, and it almost looks like the roses have been sunburnt or been burnt with chemicals, and you'll find it's causing distress through many gardeners, and it's a voracious feeder. So chili thrips have just caused a real problem. Trim it off, Rosemary, and then you do need to see if you can alternate with the control of, either you can use something like Maverick, you can use Natrasoap, or you can use neem oil and something like Eco Neem on them as well. And that will make a big difference to reducing the population. Had a comment through the week from one of the gardeners telling me that they've been alternating with Maverick and Natrasoap every week, spraying one or the other, and that seems to have kept it at bay. But once the damage is done, it will never recover with that. So we want new growth. One of the keys that I'm often saying to gardeners is use high potassium fertilizer. And what potassium will do is thicken the cell walls of the plant, build up the plant's natural resistance to disease, and make a big difference to hope the plant can cope with the damage from those chili thrips. I know it looks unsightly, but if you can keep on top of it, it will make a difference, and we'll be able to knock the population, and your roses will be able to come up and look beautiful in the spring. I'm trying to grow ginger from Peter in Benalla in Victoria. Do I have any growing tips? Yeah, if you want to grow ginger, Queensland is the spot for ginger. So one of the things, so that gives us the key, needs to be kept warm through winter. Ginger in Western Australia will cope, in the southern states will grow, but really to get it to grow really well, we need warm position, very free draining soil. It starts to die back at this time of the year. Fresh ginger is just divine. So if you can have the plant growing beautifully, warm position, liquid fertilizer regularly, something that's going to help strengthen those rhizomes. Don't let it stay cold and waterlogged, free draining soil. I know many people have success growing ginger in hydroponics or aquaponics as well, because they've got beautiful warm position, even under a glass house, if you can grow it. If you just want to grow it as an ornamental plant and you want to see how you go with it, if you've got it's slowing down at the moment and it will die back completely. So keep it somewhere where it's getting beautiful winter sun if you can, and then its fastest growth rate is through the warmer months. Feed it, keep the liquid fertilizer up to it regularly, and just enjoy it. If you want to grow ornamental ginger, you'll find that alpinia is a fantastic hardy shrub, much hardier than the edible one, but not so much of a challenge to grow. So I'd give it a go, Peter. It won't die unless you got very heavy frosts. So keep it nice and warm. To Adelaide, first question from Adelaide. Thanks for joining us, Leonie. When should I prune my dietes and how do I do it? Actually, interesting. Dietes are a plant that we call, they're not self-pruning, or self-cleaning. So, you get a shrub, it drops its older leaves, they drop to the ground, and then they disappear, the leaves compost down. What happens with dietes is that the older leaves stay on the plants. So often I'll recommend just to go through and clean up those older leaves. But if you want to chop the dietes back at ground level, so you get the head shears onto them and chop them back to ground level, you can do that at any time of the year. Yeah, you'll lose some flowers, but they shoot away beautifully again. And then you'll be able to divide them, split them up, get them growing beautifully. But it's that self-cleaning of them that doesn't happen. And that's why they tend to harbour quite a few older leaves. So if you can just go through and clean them up, gives them a new fresh lease of life. A little bit of rain at this time of the year, throw some blood and bone around them, encourage beautiful new growth. But if you say, I'm sick of them, I want to split them up and I want them to grow again, just chop them back. And you can chop them back within 5 centimetres of height from the soil level, and they'll shoot away beautifully. Dietes are one of the plants that potentially some areas have got weeds, but otherwise you can grow them quite successfully in most areas of Australia, that's for sure. But do be careful with the ones that self-seed, because potentially they can become an environmental weed problem. So never dump diete cuttings somewhere where you are potentially that they may shoot away again. From garden plants to environmental weeds, we don't want to do that. If we can, if we're aware of the problem, compost the leaves, break them down, and then the seeds won't germinate at all. Another question from Perth. Speaking of grey plants, from Margaret, I have the most beautiful weeping pear tree. The foliage is stunning. I don't get many flowers. How should I feed this plant? I agree with you. The weeping pear is just absolutely stunning. You're right, Margaret, and it's beautiful. I wouldn't care if I didn't get any flowers with a weeping pear. I would just be happy to enjoy them and enjoy the foliage. It's absolutely stunning. How should I feed this plant? Well, when it's dormant, you can put the blood and bone around, or put it as it's going dormant now to encourage and strengthen the root system. But controlled release fertilizer, any granular fertilizer, so Power Feed is a great organic based fertilizer, or granular one, that you put around at the beginning of spring and the beginning of summer, and sprinkle it around, water it in well. That not only feeds the soil, which in turn feeds the plant, but it really makes the microbes in the soil work for your advantage rather than just for the plant. And I say it all the time, but gardening certainly is all about the soil and enjoying the soil and enjoying the whole garden, because you find if you look after the soil in a garden, the garden might sound a bit cliche-ish, but the garden will certainly look after itself. Lots of questions today. We'll head to New South Wales. Which cycad makes babies, male or female? Mine throws many babies. They actually throw pups anyway. So you'll find they'll throw the side pups, and then you can split them up beautifully. So if you've got them and they get to a point that they're big enough, you can split those up, and you've got a plant coming up beautifully rather than waiting for them to grow by seed. You want to be able to split them up and enjoy them. From Sydney, good morning, good evening. I should say good evening. It's not evening yet. Good afternoon, Dennis. I have ants everywhere in my succulent and cacti garden. Do they affect the soil positively or negatively? depending on what variety of ant. Ants are good, don't get me wrong. Ants, if we didn't have ants, we wouldn't have organic matter in the soil. We wouldn't have a composting process. We wouldn't have lots of things. So they are beneficial. What they do to the soil and tend to do to the soil is make the garden, the soil water repellent. They also expose plants' roots to air, and that can be negative. So you'll find they excavate the soil. You end up with ants in pots, Dennis, and you'll find that the ants in pots, then they will, the soil will fall away, and that soil becomes water repellent to the detriment of the plant. Often you will also indicate that there may be something else going on. So you might have mealybug. Mealybug is a sap-sucking insect that lives underneath the soil a little bit. Ants tend to harbour those because it's a symbiotic relationship with mealybug and any of those sap-siphoning insects, because they secrete honeydew, which is very sweet. The ants want to look after their food source, so they look after those insects. So just investigate a little bit further. What I do find that if your soil's water repellent, the ants tend to be there. So as a quick fix, and you can try it, is put some wetting agent on your garden area and see if you can get the ants to disappear somewhere else. Otherwise, you might have to control them by putting ant dust around. Talcum powder works pretty effectively, reduces the population, but it's excavation of the plants, of the soil around the plant's roots can be a problem. If you find that your succulents, the leaves are turning a little bit yellow, that can be a problem as well. Maybe check it out, have a little dig around. I often say if you don't know what's happening in the garden and in the soil, go out there with a trowel, check it out and see actually what's happening. You might be surprised, either pleasantly or shocked. So hopefully in your case, you'll be pleasantly surprised and there won't be too many ants around. Enjoy the garden. That's beautiful. Succulent and cactuses, perfect plants for dry area gardening. And earlier I started off Facebook Live talking about keeping those areas under the eaves, those garden beds under the eaves watered. That's my big tip for this week. If you can keep those areas, or keep an eye on those areas, make sure the water's soaking into those areas. The plants won't be on the back foot. Now the weather's cooling down and now it's getting a little bit drier. Now we can have had a bit of rain. We can turn our automatic irrigation systems off and conserve as much water as possible in our gardens. Well, that's it. Once again, I just love doing Garden Gurus Facebook Live. Thank you so much for joining us. Very much part of our week, being here and sharing the gardening information the whole Garden Gurus team has got for you. I think all of us are absolute passionate gardeners and have interests in different plants all around the country. And so sharing the information with you is something so important. We'll be back for another episode next Monday at 12 Australian Eastern Standard Time. If you're joining us, mark on an alarm for 12 o'clock. We'd love for you to join us. Also, if you're in Western Australia, 10 o'clock. Lachlan's going to reach out, and those winners that have won our packets of seeds, check your messages. You may have won a packet of vegetable seeds thanks to Mr. Fothergills. And the Garden Gurus Autumn Series is back. Don't forget to tune in on Channel 9 this Saturday. Now, you can always jump onto our website and catch up on our previous stories. I must say there's some fantastic inspiration within those previous stories. You can binge watch the Garden Gurus, or you can check them out at thegardengurus.tv or our YouTube channel, thegardengurus.tv. Now, we're playing at different times throughout the country next Saturday on Channel 9. Make sure you check your local TV guide so you don't miss all the information and inspiration we have for you in your garden. And you can listen back today if there's something that you've missed out on today's live stream, and catch up on previous episodes of Garden Gurus Live on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Audible. Now, look forward to it. Thanks very much for your company. And I think I'm lucky enough to join you next Monday at 12 p.m. at noon Australian Eastern Standard Time. In the meantime, enjoy your week and absolutely enjoy the time in your garden.
Visit the Garden Gurus online store and browse through a collection of high-quality, German-made Wolfgarten tools. You'll also find a range of books with information to help create and maintain a beautiful garden. You can also access the online store on the Garden Gurus Facebook page.